So we're back with another Great Dark Beyond card review. Today we've got more neutral cards, including this sick legendary. I've been waiting forever to see Kil'jaeden in standard Hearthstone, and he's finally here, and he does not disappoint. This is a really cool card design. He's a 7-mana 7/7 demon. I love that Velen, Archimonde, and Kil'jaeden are all the same size. He's got a battle cry: replace your deck with an endless portal of demons. Each turn, they gain an additional +2/+2, which that is just infinite scaling value. You are never going to fatigue after you play Kil'jaeden. You're just always going to have more demons, and they're just going to keep getting bigger and bigger. And this is going to function as like a real deck. It's going to look and feel like a 30 card deck, just going to have like a nice portal animation over it. So what that means is you can draw from it. If you have some card draw in hand, you could draw extra demons. They will, you know, be buffed. It's not like one per turn is buffed. So if you do this on the 4th turn after Kil'jaeden or whatever, you could draw 3 demons, all of which have you know, +8/+8 in buffs, and you know, eventually those stats are just going to overwhelm people. So you know, the right time to do this is probably when you have a good solid hand that has a mix of maybe some card draw and some reactivity. If you play this on just an empty hand and you're trusting merely the demons themselves, I think you're just going to fall behind too quickly, because sometimes you're going to draw a 1-cost demon. I should note, these are just going to be randomly populated demons from the standard format pool. It's not like a predetermined set of tokens or something. They're all the same stat line. So, you know, sometimes you get a Flame Imp the next turn, and it's like, oh, I can't just play a 3/2 Flame Imp on turn 10 or whatever. That's not going to be worth it. So you're going to probably sometimes need to supplement the natural draw a little bit. Now, maybe later on, if your Flame Imp, you know, has gained 10/10 in stats, it might still be worth it. But early on, at least, you might need to do a little extra work to make the Kil'jaeden kind of worth it until it starts getting up to speed from a stat standpoint. And then, you know, sometimes you'll draw like an 8 or a 9 drop, and maybe that is awesome, and it's big defensive taunt demon, and you're super satisfied with that. And then occasionally you're still going to hit Flame Imps or small stuff that, even with some stat scaling, maybe don't keep up super well with the board. So I think you just want to make sure you're able to complement the Kil'jaeden. I don't think this is just a toss it down and automatically win the game sort of card. In fact, it's sort of the opposite. It takes a while to grind people out with this one. And I think that makes it a Hail Mary of sorts, where you only want to do this in certain game states or matchups. This might be a card, for instance, that like Reno decks that don't have otherwise well-defined win conditions kind of toss in. So, you know, a Reno Priest, maybe, right? They don't have like a big double battle cry, or like an Odin or something, like a warrior Reno that might just be able to end games really effectively. Maybe they go for Kil'jaeden instead, and they have like a lot of control pieces and card draw in hand. Play Kil'jaeden. That's their win condition late in the game to just overwhelm people. I think it's still a bit of a slow win condition in a lot of ways, because it does take a while, and you're still susceptible to your opponent's win conditions in the meantime. But that would be the kind of thing that this satisfies. You could also be like an ETC card, where you just toss this in, and it's, you know, it's there as a backup plan in case you need it if things go wrong or whatever. And in an ETC game plan in particular, this could be a counter to things like bombs. If somebody has poisoned your deck, so Plague, Death Knight, Bomb Warrior style things, we could see new versions of those in the future, who knows. Kil'jaeden will delete all those cards, turning your deck into a portal. You don't have to worry about the bombs or the plagues anymore, and any newly shuffled bombs or plagues are ignored. This card creates a portal that is basically always making your deck a 30 card deck of demons. So even if they shuffle stuff in, they're just lost to the Great Dark Beyond or whatever. Your deck is always a 30 card demon deck. On that note, things like Fanatum don't work well with Kil'jaeden. He stays at full cost. He's not discounted because it looks like you have a 30 card demon deck. And there was examples too given of things that have like, you know, specific draw triggers. There was like Flower Child and Druid. You know, that draws cards that cost 5 or more. Those should work fine as long as you have some big demons in that 30 card pool, which you almost inevitably will have some bigger demons in a 30 card pool. So I think this is pretty amazing. Like, I cannot wait to play this because it sounds so fun. I can't wait to overwhelm people with giant crazy demons after 4, 5, 6 turns or whatever. But ultimately, I do think this is a very specific and kind of slow win condition sort of card. So it's not going to be something you see everywhere, I don't think. I suspect it will be limited to control decks that just need an extra boost to end games. Maybe something like Druid is possible too, because Druid, you know, Reno Druid, like it can just get there on Rey Estraza value, but this is kind of a different way to do Rey Estraza for a longer, well, not really a longer term period, I guess, but protecting you from fatigue sort of makes it longer term. So, you know, things like Druid and Priest maybe come to mind for this most readily. I don't think this can be like the top end of an aggro deck, because the risk of playing this and just drawing 2 dead off the top for like a few turns in a row will be too high. And I think you want your like top end on aggro decks to be more aggressive and not pivot you into that late game. I think some people will try it, but I suspect it just won't really make enough sense there. So ultimately, situationally good card, situational win condition, kind of a narrow result for this one, despite being, you know, a neutral card that's accessible to everybody. Really cool effect. Oh, I didn't even talk about freaking Warlock. Warlock has the Archimon package and the demons that didn't start in your deck package costing less, which does help the Kil'jaeden certainly. You know, you could play 2 guys that discount the cost of demons that didn't start in your deck by 1, making each card from Kil'jaeden cost 2 less. I talked about Warlock, but not the full context of this expansion. I think that's probably a good fit for Kil'jaeden as well. It still needs help though. Like, that's not, in my opinion, going to just straight up win you games. So, you know, ultimately a synergy fit as designed. Like, clearly, hey, these are a bunch of demons that didn't start in my deck. Like, yes, of course. But from a deck construction standpoint, can Warlock build a list that's weaving enough demons in early so that, you know, in other words, those weren't like defensive control cards? Because I think that's the kind of deck you need with this. There was, you know, Black Hole could be a removal in that package, sure, but it feels like it's going to be really challenging to build a list that gets you to a Kil'jaeden in a good place and gets you past the Kil'jaeden for 3 or 4 turns in a good place while still running the full kind of demon generation package. Maybe though you just run the discount guys, an Archimon, and a Kil'jaeden, and that's like a 4-card core, and you kind of ignore anything else that might pop up in that angle, and you just run a control deck around it. That could actually be a possibility. I don't think you lean all the way in though if you're going to do this, because I think the deck will fall apart while trying to get to Kil'jaeden, because again, he's a one-of legendary. It's just like you're not always going to hit him. If he's your win condition, it's a slow one, and it's a sometimes one you don't see, which would be hard for that deck. So anyway, Kil'jaeden, you know, specifically strong card for a very limited number of scenarios and a limited number of decks, but still really cool, and I think strong in that context. Moving on here to the Galactic Crusader. This is a 7-mana 3/9 Draenei with Taunt and Death Rattle. Get 2 random holy spells. They cost 3 less. And this guy's just a little too slow. I like how much value is here. I like big taunts, of course. One of my favorite kinds of cards. But ultimately, 9 health doesn't go that far these days with all the rush minions and easy, cheap removal out there. And the Death Rattle here being on a delay, I think, is a punishment too. And it being random, I guess, you know, sometimes the random holy spells are going to suck. We've seen a lot of really cheap holy spells in particular printed as of late. So sometimes the discounts here won't even really feel like you're getting a full discount. You're going to get a 1-mana spell that's discounted to 0 and feel pretty disappointed in the result. So ultimately, this just doesn't look like it makes the cut for a constructed card. Now, the Astral Vigilant, this one looks pretty sweet. 1-mana, 1/1, Battlecry. Get a copy of the last Draenei you played. And yeah, I think that's actually pretty sweet. This is one that kind of sits awkward in hand sometimes, but then there are moments you have really key Draenei. We're seeing so many Draenei already. We're going to see so many more Draenei, I'm sure, because when they print a new minion type, they just have to support it. And some of them we know are just insane. Like we saw Velen already. He's like this big, crazy win condition Draenei. Play a Velen on 7, play an Astral Vigilant on 8, and you can play another Velen right away, right? Like 2 straight turns of Velens. That is going to be the kind of thing that overwhelms people. Not to mention the Velen actually triggers this battle cry, I guess, as well. So you got crazy chains going. But because this is 1 mana too, you can kind of always play it on curve. Like even if you're trying to copy a 3-cost Draenei, play it on 3, and then you got the Astral Vigilant on 4, and then play the Draenei again. You know, it doesn't say the last card you played this turn. So this is always kind of that 1-2 punch follow-up, which I think makes it really nice. If this was a 2-mana card and you had kind of a gap in between, it would be really awkward and really bad. But that's a 1-mana card. I think this actually just looks really good. Moving on to the Crimson Commander here. This is a 4-mana 3/4 Draenei with Battle Grind Death Rattle. Give all Draenei in your hand +1/+1, which that's really nice little buff. That's +2/+2 for only 3 mana. That keeps up really well comparatively to some of the stuff we see, for instance, in Hand Buff Paladin, which has been so good for so long. And it is, of course, specific to Draenei, but I've already got this inkling of a little aggressive Draenei build, and you just have a lot of like Draenei consistency and a lot of bodies, and this is gonna help make that work better, because suddenly every little point goes a little bit further into a big, you know, Velen win condition or whatever. Keep people on the back foot constantly, and then just keep slamming the big crazy scary stuff later. I think that looks great. Like, this is just a very efficient card. Now, again, it is very specific. As soon as you don't have a deck that's all Draenei, it goes away, and I suspect that's something that lasts for like one expansion. Like, you know, there might be 1 or 2 decks this expansion that are full in on Draenei and care about something like this. So perhaps a short lifespan on this card, but I think a successful one. It may not be around for long, but it might be good while it is. So next up here is the Astrobiologist, a 2-mana 2/2 Draenei with Battle Cry. At the start of your next turn, discover a spell, which it's kind of neat in theory. Usually we see discover stuff happening right now, but this says, well, maybe I don't have any problems right now, and you know, the game state's going to change next turn, so I can say, hey, look, okay, they developed this specific kind of threat, and now I can find a specific answer to that. Maybe they went wide and I find an AoE, or maybe they went tall and I find a single target removal or whatever, right? And you know, for now, I'm just happy to get a little body and set up for later. I think that's neat in theory, but my instincts tell me that usually you need to find a card now. Like, we like card draw that's instant. We like discover effects that are instant. If you top deck this on turn 7 and you need an answer right now, you need a card right now, Astrobiologist is gonna screw you. You're gonna be like, oh god, no, dude, I need it now. I need the card. I don't have anything to do right now. I'm not worried about next turn. I have problems to solve at this exact moment. So, you know, in theory, if you're like in a deck that's playing ahead, or you're just playing a lot of minions anyway, maybe you can slot the Astrobiologist in because she's just another Draenei and you're looking to buff Draenei's because of your Crimson Commander or whatever. I think that's probably fine, but as a general use discover card, I think it would be a lot better if it discovered immediately. Now, of course, that might be too efficient for just, you know, a 2-cost card. Usually the discovers for those cheaper discover type cards have some kind of restriction or whatever. This is not restricted. It's not like discover a card that costs 3 or less or whatever, anything like that. So, which actually can be good too, by the way, but you get the idea. I think essentially the delay on this is not an upside. I think it's a downside, which will limit this card a little. So next up here is Lunar Trailblazer, 5-mana 6/4 Draenei. Battle Cry at the cost of a random spell in your hand to this minion's cost, which in theory could be another big spell enabler here. You know, you got a big 10-mana spell, you play this, reduce that to 5, you're really happy. Maybe you coin this out on 4, and then you play the big spell on 5. Bada bing, you got your own little kind of scuffed big spell mage. But the big problem, I think, with this, it's not necessarily a giant problem, but it's a restriction at least, is that it is a random spell in hand. It's not the highest cost spell in hand, which just makes things more difficult. You can't run any low cost spells, of course, number one, but even if you have multiple high cost spells, because sometimes you need more than just, you know, the select 2 you're trying to cheat out, you got like a 7 and a 9 and a 10 to make sure your deck has enough big stuff, then it might hit the 7 instead of the 10, and you're a little bit sad that you couldn't isolate the biggest, craziest thing. So a little bit of a downside there. You know, it's still interesting though. It still allows for some big cheat scam plays. I don't think Big Spell Mage needs this. I know we're sensitive to this kind of effect because Big Spell Mage has been so crazy since the mini set. But you know, maybe a warrior has access now to this that they didn't before, because it is neutral. It can get in some neat spaces. Also, I wonder with Draenei like discounts at all. If you discount the cost of this, I wonder if that factors in. So, you know, make this cost 3 or whatever, then it could turn the spell into a 3-cost spell. Might be something there as well. So this at least has some interesting angles to attack with. But I don't think it's like the new era of big spell everything by any means. Moving on to the Star Scale Constellar. This is a 5-mana 4/7 dragon. With Spell Burst, double this minion's attack. That's just not very good. This is just a big dumb body. It turns into an 8/7. Like, yes, with some hand buffs, of course, it can scale more, but It's still ultimately just a big dumb body, and I don't think that's scary enough. Also, keep in mind, Spellburst is a one-time effect, in case some people have forgotten that. So it's not like going to 8 and then to 16 and then so on. It just happens once, then it's over, and you got yourself an 8/7. That's just not good enough. Even with hand buffs, it's still just ultimately not good enough. Moving on to the Urzul Rager. We actually got another Rager here. This is a 3-mana 5/1 demon with Lifesteal and Spellburst. Attack a random enemy minion. So like theoretically some healing in a pinch when you combine this with a spell. Ultimately though, I just don't see this being worth it. That random enemy minion aspect is pretty challenging. There's a lot of 1/1 pirates. Like, yeah, it still heals 5, but you feel kind of bad that this died already. Even if this just had 2 health and kind of hedged against the 1/1s of the world, and it could like 2 for 1 and maybe heal you 10, I'd have a little more hope for this. But the conditional aspect of its effect, the crazy low health total, I don't think it's worth it. Like, it is cool to be in the random demon pool for things like Kil'jaeden. You know, these kinds of cards are going to create interesting moments for sure. So I'm glad that it exists. It's just not a card I ever see making an actual deck list. Moving on to the Aadar Bru, a 7-mana 5/6 demon with Taunt and Lifesteal, and costs 1 less for each enemy minion. And man, this card's pretty intriguing. Like, I really want to like this one. I'm really torn. I think if this was a 6-cost card, I would be like all in, dude. Like, oh yeah, dude, this is gonna be like 3 or less so often. As a 7-cost card, I don't know, man. Like, it's still pretty intriguing because, like I said, we've seen so many pirate boards, like just 1/1s everywhere, right? There's little tokens everywhere, and you could easily see this getting down to like a 2-mana 5/6 with Taunt and Lifesteal, which a lot of decks are gonna be happy to weave in. It's just like, oh yeah, of course, that's fine. I'm gonna weave this into my turn. I'm gonna be really happy. This is a nice little stabilizer. The Lifesteal in particular just gives us a lot of upside. So I think it's gonna get there. I hope it does, by the way. I love cards like this. I want big defensive taunt cards, right? But I do worry sometimes this one gets stuck a lot and your opponent's just playing 1 or 2 things per turn, and then this becomes a lot less interesting. I know some people look at this and say a 5-mana 5/6 with Taunt Lifesteal is not bad for 5 Regis. That's true, kind of, but maybe that's true like 5 years ago, right? Like, our instincts tell us that's true. In reality, I don't know. Maybe it's not as true these days. So I think like 3 is the sweet spot for this one, where I'm really excited. So just how often does it get to 3? I think maybe often enough, but that's in this past meta. Do metas shift, and do we still see as many tokens in the future? That makes me hesitant. I'm still going to give this card a good score though, because I'm hopeful. And, you know, as the power level of the game accelerates, and in general, the trend is going to be that more things are on board, right? Like more minions get summoned as more things get more powerful, and that makes this more powerful as well. Like, this kind of keeps up in essence with power scaling that's related to the width of the board. So I'm going to give this a little nod and say the Aadar Bru is actually good, and I'm going to play it, and I'm going to be happy. So next appears the Crystal Welder, a 2-mana 2/3 taunt with Battlecry. If you're building a starship, gain +2/+2, which, I mean, that's a nice 4/5 taunt body for only 2. That's, again, pretty cool to weave into turns as a defensive speed bump of sorts. I do worry, though, that this one's going to be dead early pretty often. And sometimes it's hard for your 2-cost cards not to be able to be good on turn 2, because you just won't have a starship piece down on turn 2. Like, a lot of the starship pieces are probably going to be landing a little later. At least the ones we've seen so far are all like 3 cost or more. Maybe there'll be cheap ones, but even then you got to find them on time, right? The conditionality on this is pretty rough because you're not excited to play a 2-mana 2/3 taunt. So it does feel like one that kind of, you know, is relegated more towards a little bit later, at which point the stats of this don't seem quite as compelling, even with the cost efficiency. So I have a feeling this probably gets dropped in starship decks in favor of just other good like class cards and, you know, some removal and just better minions, card draw, that sort of thing. It's just going to take a higher priority over a 4/5 taunt is my guess. And then finally here we have the Deep Space Curator, a 3-mana 2/4 spell burst. Get a random minion of the spell's cost and then set its cost to 0. So, you know, you're on turn 10, you play the Curator with a 7-mana spell, you get a random 7-cost minion that now costs 0. So you get a 2/4, a 7-mana spell, and a 0-mana 7-cost card. Like, okay, that's the dream, but random cards still kind of suck. There's so many times they just, you know, are probably a pile of stats, and sometimes a weak pile of stats at that, because, you know, it had some Battlecry or something you can't realize the upside on. you got a Prophet Velen with you know with no Draenei or whatever, and you're really sad, or you got a Kil'jaeden and you don't want to transform your deck into demons, right? It's like, oh crap, I got a 7/7, and then of course the reality is you don't want to wait till turn 10 for that. That sucks. Like, you know, you also don't want to play this on turn 3 and hope it survives into turn 4. That sucks. So in other words, I think this card sucks. I think there's just not going to be time for this, and the payoff being so random and so unlikely to be relevant or good, it doesn't make it worth it, particularly because it's just so hard to get into a good spot anyway. So really awkward and low payoff sort of neutral card. So all that said, let's go ahead and rate these cards from 1 to 5 stars. Kil'jaeden is a 4-star card. Galactic Crusader is a 1-star card. Astral Vigilant is a 4-star card. Crimson Commander is a 4-star card. Astrobiologist is a 2-star card. Lunar Trailblazer is a 3-star card. Starscale Constellar is a 1-star card. Urzul Rager is a 2-star card. Aadar Bru is a 4-star card. Crystal Welder is a 2-star card. Deep Space Curator is a 1-star card. Yeah, there you go. That's almost all the neutrals. There's like one more that was a straggler. I wasn't going to wait 2 hours for one more neutral card. So we'll catch that next time, but pretty cool, man. Kil'jaeden is sick. I'm really excited to play this card. I'm not even as excited for it in Warlock, weirdly, as other classes, but love that this is a neutral. Love that everybody can kind of play around with this. Really excited to see this in action. So share your thoughts on these cards down below. Thanks so much, as always, for watching, and until next time, game on.